I am one of your hosts, Justin Ham, and thank you for joining us as we journey through tough issues that guys face as athletes and also as humans. Let's welcome our guest today, Brandon Noble, as he is here today to help us navigate the questions of guys, God, and does it matter? Well, it's so great for you to join us, Brandon. Just before we get started, just if you could give us a little background of yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. So I'm up in the Watertown, New York area, and I grew up, not too far from here in Potsdam. Played baseball at Jefferson Community College. Went on to SUNY Cortland in sport management, and then made my way back up here and have been at JCC for 5 years. And this past summer, God led me into FCA as an area rep up here. And I've seen some great stuff from one of our local schools, and so I just really felt the calling to be the one to help facilitate more growth of FCA in the North Country, as we call it. And just in the past basically half a year, we've seen some really cool things happening up here. So just really excited to see FCA, really growing in Northern New York.
Yeah, it is exciting. It's exciting to see the doors that are continuing to be opened because people like you are willing to step into that calling that God has placed on our lives. So specifically, you said you played baseball growing up. I know a little bit because I did a little research, but you currently are involved in a baseball team in some capacity, correct?
Yeah, so baseball's been just such a big part of my life, between jobs, kind of on and off the field. And so baseball's been really a big center point of my life. And, not only at the college level, but I coach our oldest sons, little league and summer baseball. And so baseball is really just nonstop for us. And it's just a lot of fun. And, I love all sports, but baseball is definitely closest to us.
What is it about baseball? So I say this as a full disclosure. I am not anti-baseball. I am a basketball, soccer guy, and I know soccer is kind of one of those sports too that not everybody gets. But what is it about baseball that drew you to it so much?
Yeah, I think just so much can happen on every single play, and there's so much thinking behind it, and it takes such a unique skill set in different positions and so many different roles on the team. And now that I'm more on the coaching rather than the playing side, I get to really see so many different types of players and people have success. And
Mm.
especially even more so now, on the faith side and with FCA and coaching up and raising our son. It's just there's so many lessons throughout how much failure you go through, how you respond to all the the positive outcomes that you have, and then even more importantly how you respond to the negative, and how much failure you go through, and just everything that it can teach you. And so I just think baseball is so unique and in that area of how mental it is, and how much you really really have to rely on faith in Jesus to help you through how much failure you're just basically guaranteed to go through in baseball. So
Yeah, I'm new to baseball in the sense that I've really been watching it a lot. I coach at our local high school, so a lot of my basketball players also play baseball, so it's fun
mhm.
going to watch them play. And one of their dads, who's one of my assistants, says base thing about baseball that's crazy is the best players fail like 65% of the time, at least in terms of batting. So like really is part of that process just really understanding what actually is failure?
Yeah, and so something that I see the more mature players start to understand is not be as wrapped up in what the actual outcome is, but more so, you prepare all this time to put yourself in the best possible chance, and you can do everything right and still fail.
Mm.
You might crush a ball and put the most perfect swing on it, and it's just the best ball you've ever hit, and then it gets caught. And it's, if you're too wrapped up in, oh, I got out, it can really eat at you over the course of a season. And but understanding and being able to, filter that out and understand that, okay, I did everything right. That was a really great at bat, and I'm going to use that to help propel me into my next, performance. Where at the same time, you could put the worst possible swing on it. You could barely touch it and get a hit out of it. And it all looks the same in the scorebook. And so it's just being able to understand that the outcome's not everything. And as long as you're putting yourself in the best possible spot, consistently, then that's really what's important, and being able to understand and process through that. And it's not
Mhm.
always not always that easy when you're really searching for a hit and you want to come through for your team. But yeah, that's usually where guys and anyone who plays baseball, softball, that if they're able to work through that a lot more efficiently or quickly, you can keep showing up for your team rather than letting it get to you too much.
Yeah, and the beauty of sports is that there's so much that can apply that we can learn from sports that we can apply to our life. And just listening to how you just described that, that sounds a lot almost like living by faith.
Yeah, it's yeah, you do a lot of the right things, and you trust, and that again, you keep just, I guess, showing up, being consistent, and doing those things, and just trust that what you're doing is going to pay off. And there's a reason to why I guess, again, more, it's maybe a little easier for a coach than a player, but I really try to quickly get to why did that happen. You did everything
Mm,
right and it still didn't work out. What lesson can you learn from that? Kind of, how am I being tested here, versus just being handed all this success, or always getting a hit, or always striking everyone out, or whatever it might be. And that's been a big focus in kind of my FCA group here at JCC with a lot of our baseball players, is that um, trying to get into that headspace a little more quickly about, okay, I'm going through this maybe down, maybe a bit of a slump, and what's God trying to teach me through this? What area is he trying to pull out of me, or help me maybe surrender? Or maybe there's an area of my baseball life that I'm not really fully surrendering to him, and maybe he's able
mm,
to use that as a, be like, okay, let's try to pull different areas out, or a lesson that you can be taught through that, and then go from there. But again, you could still even do everything right and whatnot, but still not maybe get the outcome you want. But again, hopefully as quickly as possible, what's God trying to teach me through this struggle, or through this maybe good streak that you're going
mm.
on.
Yeah, just even listening to that, it's that verse. I think I don't want to misquote it, but the idea of the trying of our faith produces patience. And it just sounds like, again, not a baseball guy, but just the idea of maybe you're doing everything right. It's not working the way you want to. I ended up quitting because I couldn't hit a curveball. But some people, you got to stick with it. And that's exactly what our faith walk looks like.
Yeah, it's yeah, that's kind of, yeah, that's a good way to put it. And I guess I always try to look for, I kind of mentioned it before, but like, maybe what areas am I holding on to, or am I not surrendering to the Lord maybe as quickly as I should, or as much of it, and try to be like, I'm going to work, which is great, or I'm going to try to do this all on my own, and work my way out of it, which, yes, there's a big component there that you need to do. But if you're still not relying on Jesus to help us through this, or to give us the strength, and to play our sport, or to coach it, or to do whatever, it's only going to take you so far. And so, like that, yeah, that can really easily apply to so many areas of just everyday job, or even ministry work, of I am going to try to outwork everything, and then maybe still come up short. And so that's an area that I've been trying to instill to our guys, but then in turn instill to me, that what areas can I still surrender more of, or what areas can I um pray over more, and kind of look at it through that lens as well.
Yeah, that's never easy. It's never easy to be able to not focus on the results, and the process is something that I struggle with as well. So I can absolutely relate to that. But being somebody that coaches, young men kind of depending on what year they are in college or how old they are when they see you, what are some common things that without, disclosing anything that might identify anyone, but what are some common themes that you've seen as things that maybe are getting these young men down or like that are keeping them down or struggles in their everyday life that might be interfering with whatever that might look like?
Yeah, I would say one of the positives, from our huddle, and then even our guys that on the team that don't participate in that, is how they're handling everything throughout their life and how that translates to the baseball field or whatever sport it might be, and different life experiences, and coming from different parts of the country, different parts of the world to come play baseball and go to school. And so you know what are they going through kind of on a daily basis that then kind of carries over
Yeah.
to their sport. And so trying to work through that, trying to understand that side of it, so that way as coaches we know what's on their table and what's on their plate, and how we can help them be able to maybe work through that, so then when they come to the field and come to the game, that they're in a little better, of a clear mindset, I guess you could say. But says it's definitely difficult. It's like, especially as a college student athlete, the schoolwork part kind of starts piling up, and maybe you miss an
Sure.
assignment. And so now you're worried about that. You're maybe missing home a little bit. And, especially in our season, the weather's usually not super great. And it wasn't great this season. So it's like now it's raining and you're playing baseball, it's cold, the schoolwork's piling up and you're tired, and maybe again now you've gone through a couple games where you're not playing great, and how can we get through that as quickly as possible, um and showing them their strengths and showing the things that you're doing that's reasons for you to be positive. And so yeah, getting to understand, I guess, all in all, getting to understand the total person and what they're bringing
Yeah.
to the table, so that way we can help them that way. And then usually, especially baseball is a little different, where again you can't necessarily try harder because it doesn't always work that way. It's a little more about playing more free, having fun with it, and trying to take some of the stresses out. So then that's usually where the success starts to come.
Yeah. So there's a couple things there that I really would love to unpack. The first one being like, is that how you've always coached, like coaching the whole athlete, or is that something that you learned along the way? Did you have a coach that you played for that's kind of how they operated, or is that something you've kind of developed over the years?
um Definitely something that I've developed. I think at this level, we have a good opportunity to see the whole person,
Mm,
and and get to know them across the board, and just how much time we spend with them too. So it's an area that I've tried to improve on, about being more intentional about the questions asked, and getting to know their personal lives a little bit better, and um, and just and that's an area through mediums, kind of like the podcast that you guys are doing, and other similar ones, to where I get to hear from other coaches and kind of just hear what works for other one, and try to kind of maybe steal some ideas, or and use
sure.
other people's experiences to help mold what we do. And so it's definitely something I've had to learn. Again, it's really easy to get caught up in wins, losses, and stats, and whatnot, but just trying to do our best for them to understand that it's ultimately not just transactional. It's more, how can we help them to be ready, not just in their sport, but through their college journey, and ultimately going into whatever career path that they want to, and family side. And so just trying to understand all of that. But it's definitely been a work in progress. And again, it's really easy to get caught up in the moment, and obviously we all want to win, and we want our guys to perform their best and put up the stats that help them get to where they want to go. But um, just trying to make sure that they never feel like so. And with bigger teams, it can be difficult sometimes to really get through that. But definitely been something that we've worked on. But I just remember as a player, I thought our coach did a good job off the field at getting to know us and working through some of that. So it's a bit of a mixture of getting to see what's been done, but also just over time, learning how important that side of it is.
I think that's so important, and I think it kind of links to the second question where like you were mentioning before how it's not something to improve just trying harder, right? Like in baseball, you're not gonna, from what I can tell, swinging harder doesn't guarantee anything other than you might hurt your back or something like that. So like when we try so hard, and if we have coaches who are focusing too much on the result, that adds a level of pressure to the players. So like if they're struggling, if they're quote failing, then their worth now is then determined to their performance. And that's where I think a lot of coaches maybe can lose players is when they tie their worth to their performance. And those are two very different things.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the consistency side is so important, especially in sports where you have to make decisions pretty quickly. I know, obviously, basketball you have seconds to sub in and out. Baseball, we usually play two games and then back to back days and whatever it might be. And um, for us to be able to look and preach, consistency and reliability, and if we have a decision between two players and maybe someone's struggling a little bit, but we know all the work they've put in up to that point, maybe again the results aren't quite there yet, but they've worked their butt off all year and they've been the most consistent, in the weight
Right.
room, and we don't have to worry about them off the field, and their how they approach their practice and everything is always consistent. Then we just kind of are in a business of reminding them.
Yeah.
Actually, I don't remember who I heard that from once, but I kind of stole that for a little bit. Is kind of we're as coaches professional reminders, and
Oh,
it's like you've put in all this work over these handful of months and practices, and even though the results aren't there, we're here to remind you that you have this ability, and you're maybe you're really close to clicking and you're about to go on a tear, or maybe if you see someone start to fall off a little bit, we're here to remind them like, hey, you said these were your goals, this is where you want to get, this is why you're here. Once you start to maybe stray away from that, we're here to remind them that this is what this is what you wanted, this is what our team goals are. Again, let's get you back on track as quickly as possible. But the consistency part plays just such a large role in that.
I love that. I have never heard professional reminders, and I actually just wrote that down. So I'm gonna steal that. Who knows? That could end up being the title of this episode. But um, I love that though because I think it's important, and that's where I think the whole biblical model of discipleship comes into play is because you have people with a bit more perspective or have been along down the journey longer of following Jesus, kind of like a coach would be understanding the game better than the players. So they've been there, they've seen it, and then they're able to witness maybe things along the way, maybe something they struggled with when they were a player, but that ability to remind them, kind of like in life, like, hey, listen, it's going to get hard, it's going to be difficult, there's going to be challenges, but at the end of the day, this is what we signed up for when we said, I want to follow Jesus. And I think that, that's why I love working for FCA is because there's such a translation between that might be the wrong word, but there's such a connection between sports and then the idea of living that Christian life. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I liked where you started to go with that, and tying discipleship and just even like the E3 model
Mm,
within FCA. Start to that my mind starts to go to that in sports, to where as coaches, if we can obviously, we talked a lot already about kind of engaging with our players and what that looks like, but then our goal is then to equip them with okay, situational plans and focuses and the skills that they have, and then the knowledge that they have to then go out and play that way. And then, you know, especially the higher level you go, you know, if you have a team of players that are now empowered to be able to make decisions on the field or on the court, wherever, whatever sport, and not necessarily need the coach as much, to then where they're able to execute a game plan and whatever's happening. I think that connection, like you said, is actually really neat, to where, again, if we have some players out there that don't, that I guess that need us less, that's a pretty good spot to be. And again, pretty similar to where, you know, if we're kind of coaching up maybe a volunteer or some student leaders in a
Hmm.
huddle, to where now they're ready to go out and share the gospel and create disciples who create disciples. It's kind of, yeah, it's kind of like that on the field or in whatever sport, that, you know, they're able to now take everything that they're taught and coached and then make decisions on the field and in the game that help the team win. And yes, we're here to again remind them and guide them and show them areas that they're not seeing, but if they're out there and able to do that, and then maybe now they're able to help their teammates there, yeah, there's, yeah, a lot of connection between, you know, faithful discipleship and then almost discipleship within a team, to where now they're kind of all clicking together, and then we're not necessarily take a back seat as coaches, but again, if they're out there doing it and need us less, it helps us be able to focus in different areas. So yeah, there's a lot of really good connection there.
And I think you nailed it too, though, earlier when you mentioned that, like, you got to know your guys, right? So, like, in order to be able to do and have and know what players need what freedom, like my point guard doesn't need quite as much attention from me as like the brand new kid who it's his first year playing varsity. Like that kid needs a little more attention, but I need to know that based on spending time with them. And I think that's the part of discipleship. You know, if you segue outside of sports and put it into that idea of discipleship, whether it's formally through FCA, whether it's a huddle or anything like that, or just sharing your faith and coming alongside people, for us to really be able to get involved, we have to get outside ourselves and really begin to intentionally pour in to people that are around us. And I
I
think that's
think,
hard.
yeah, and I start to think, you know, giving, you know, maybe that veteran player that encouragement and confidence, and I guess to use the empowerment of, you know, you can pull this person alongside of you, not just coaches, and help coach that freshman up, or help coach
Yeah.
that player that's alongside of you. And the communication, you know, between plays and what they're seeing as players is just as important, to where, you know, maybe a huddle leader or someone within their faith, you know, giving them the encouragement that, you know, it doesn't need to be perfect, but if you're helping come alongside your fellow, you know, teammate or classmate, and whether it's, you know, a huddle or just, you know, situations that they come across in their everyday life, if they have that encouragement that, you know, maybe if we're the huddle leader, they don't necessarily need us to be
Mm,
right there to give them guidance. Now they're prepared and have the confidence to be like, hey, you know, I've experienced this before, or this is a, you know, maybe something someone said that helped me. And so if they have that confidence and empowerment to
yeah.
help someone on the faith side, I think is so important as well. So yeah, a lot of connection there as well.
I love this. I could talk about this forever, but I know you got a lot to do probably today. So I guess just the last thought I would just have is, you know, in your in your experience over the years, whether it's FCA or just everyday life, you know, if you could have one thing that you would want people to remember about you, Brandon Noble, what would you want that to be?
Ooh, that's a that's a big
It's
one.
not it's not an easy question.
No, and I feel like I'm still so, you know, young in our coaching. You know, I didn't necessarily expect to get into coaching, and I did, you know, I was kind of thinking that going into this too, is, you know, I coming into coaching and also a ministry position is something that only God could
Mm,
have known and orchestrated. It's not something that I had planned. And so Um, and so I would say an area that I pray a lot on, and whether that's amongst our players and coaches and people that were around. Officials has been a big one, especially in baseball where it's very, I guess, celebrated to have your rants on officials and whatnot, whatever it might be. A big prayer of mine that I think can fit this question is that someone would maybe see Jesus through my actions and just um, help me be a reflection of Jesus in all that I do, and just be able to kind of counter what the world views as success within sports, and material items and positions and status and money and all of that. And that's just something, every national anthem of every before every game, a big piece of my prayer before every game is just help me be a reflection of Jesus, and in how I coach our players, how I interact with umpires and officials and the other team. And so I just hope that the players that I come across and the coaches and officials and fans and whoever I work with, just that I can be a reflection of Jesus and point others towards him and not away from him. And I think that's a incredibly difficult thing to do in sports sometimes, and that's a point I made in our FCA group is, if someone's kind of lone example or experience with church or with Jesus is through us, in this one game that we played, if we have like a FCA shirt on or some other piece or like a bracelet, and I'm out there coaching, if I unfortunately maybe point someone in the wrong direction, that's definitely not how I want to be remembered or thought of as a coach, and as a,
Mm.
ultimately as a man of Christ. Is, I guess, how can I be a reflection through, when we do well, when we're not doing well, if an umpire makes a bad call, and understand that, I've made probably just as many mistakes, if not more than that umpire today. And uh yeah, just ultimately, how can I be a reflection of Christ in the coaching space and in the sports world in general.
Mm. I love that. That's a good answer. And that's a great answer to a tough question on the spot. So that was well done. Before we get out of here, do you want to give a shout out to what you guys got ministry wise going on at FCA, or any huddles or any social medias you want to throw out there to let people know to follow you guys?
Oh, absolutely, I appreciate that. It's like I said, in this short amount of time, I think FCA is starting to explode up here, and just is so amazing to see God moving. And so, just a great testament that is, there was one school that's had FCA up here for a while, and that's South Jefferson. They continue to do amazing work. Indian River Central School up here, um, is going strong, and then we've got two new huddles starting up this month at General Brown and Sackett's Harbor. So if people could be praying for those schools, that would be great. And then there's a few more kind of in the works that we're building on. But just something that's awesome that's going on is we just did these Jesus One shirts. This is our JCC one. We've got one at South Jefferson and at Indian River. So we're just excited to see Jesus One message
Hmm.
going through the North Country up here in the greater, Jefferson County area. And so we do have Facebook and Instagram, and it's FCA NNY, or FCA Northern New York. And so it's just really neat to see the students excitement for what FCA is doing up here, and obviously ultimately what the Lord is doing. And it's so great. South Jefferson's been doing amazing work for quite a long time, and so now to see it catching on throughout is just such a blessing. And just yeah, just the prayer that more student athletes and students will be coming to these new huddles, and that the more schools continue to see the benefit and have that encouragement for more students and coaches and leaders to take on that creation. So yeah, just really excited for what's going on up here.
That's awesome. And I just want to thank you so much, Brandon, for taking some time. And you should go check out those social medias. That was my only real interaction with Brandon, other than seeing him on some Zoom calls. And it is exploding. There is always something new popping up, and it's so cool. So I will put that in the bio so people can see the what your socials are. So awesome. Well, thank you so much, Brandon. I really appreciate you taking some time out today to chat with us. And I'm sure I'll be seeing you on some Zoom calls.
Yeah, thanks so much.